Well, spring has officially sprung. And although I absolutely love seeing all the flowers bloom, the pollen really gets to me. Sometimes I just want to smell the roses, but I can't because I'm stuffed up. Luckily, I started using Deep Cozy, and it's amazing. It's a nasal irrigation system for people like you and me who just want to love the spring, but our allergies make it so hard. Deep Cozy has a electronic and squeeze bottle option. I've been using it about once a week, and it's so nice to go outside and take a nice deep breath without being stuffy. We partnered with them to give our listeners 15% off at checkout. So head over to deepcozy.com, use promo code wifeofcrime1. That's DEEPCOZY.com, promo code wifeofcrime1 at checkout. If you're uncertain whether this product is for you, consult a doctor or professional. Be sure to follow the instructions very carefully for proper use. Contact Deep Cozy customer service team through the Deep Cozy website with any questions.
This episode is brought to you by Pluto TV. Are you looking for your next case? Pluto TV has all your favorite crime dramas streaming for free, which means suspicion is free, with countless cases to crack. Watch CSI, Criminal Minds, NCIS, Blue Bloods, Tracker, FBI, and SWAT, all for free from all your favorite devices. Feel the free. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.
This podcast is an unscripted, unedited conversation about true crime. We take the cases very seriously, but I don't take myself seriously at all, and neither should you. Welcome to Wife of Crime.
So, Russ, I have been wanting to deep dive this cult since we started this podcast, but I knew it was going to be heavy. It's complex and mind-boggling, and it will leave you questioning. Did Jim Jones have any ounce of good inside of him? Or was he pure evil? This is the case of Reverend Jim Jones and the People's Temple. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Wife of Crime, a true crime podcast where I tell my husband, Russ, true crime stories and he reacts to them.
What's up, folks? It's your boy, Russ, a.k.a. Senor 90 Minutes, a.k.a. the Bird Whisperer.
Senor 90 Minutes because you're drinking a 90-minute IPA?
That's been my go-to lately, the Dogfish Head 90 Minute.
Yeah, you've been drinking them pretty often lately.
And I got that new bird feeder that goes on the glass that's see-through.
Mm-hmm.
And, I play the video games, and the birds come up and visit me. It's kind of cool, but some of them get a little nervous. As soon as I look, they run. Mm-hmm. Well, they don't run. They're kind of like me. None of us can run.
They fly.
They fly. And I roll up. In the words of Ludacris, roll out. But yeah, it's kind of dope. I got it on Temu for like, I don't know, $6, but now with tariffs, fucking $6 thing might be $47.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, it might be $47 now.
R.I.P. Temu, son.
Right? I know.
I used to get so much cheap trash from there. Like,
it had a lot of cheap stuff for dog toys because our dogs rip everything to shreds.
Yeah, like I don't want to buy them something super nice that's like a $20 toy and then it's dead by the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Yes, he is the bird whisperer because we have a lot of birds here. We're not used to seeing all these birds. All you're used to seeing is pigeons.
Yeah.
We have cardinals and crows and sparrows and doves and all kinds. And what's the blue ones? Blue jays. So Russ has his favorites. We have a woodpecker. He's got a red mohawk. We've identified all of them at this point.
It's crazy how you get old fast and you start watching birds.
It's true. Birds become so fascinating to you when you get older.
And in the words of Sporty Thieves, no pigeons. For those of you know.
Yeah, it's funny. We are getting old because people reached out after you talked about being a gardener. People reached out when I put on Instagram, on the Instagram story of your whole gardening setup where he's like germinating his seeds and he's got like a UV light.
First of all, hold
and
up.
all kinds of stuff. And people, wait, what?
It sounds a lot more special than it is. Germinating seeds means you just put the seed in the dirt and put water on it.
I know, but
Like, it's not that special.
But you have a whole setup with lights and
a whole
stuff.
First, it's a little bullshit light my mom bought me. The shit probably don't even work.
Well, I got a lot of messages of people asking if you were growing weed. And I was like, no, he's growing flowers. He's in his old man era. Birds and flowers are his jam.
Oh,
right about now.
I'd like to stand up to this, but it's a little tough.
Well, you know that it's true. So on the Patreon, we covered the new Netflix documentary, Gone Girls, about the Long Island serial killer.
Oh, that's a crazy one, yeah.
It was a crazy documentary. Very, very good documentary. Check it out if you haven't. And our episode on it was a fan favorite. I will say everyone really liked our episode about this one.
It was vintage Russ.
It was vintage Russ.
When do I speak in third person?
He came back with the fire.
Yeah, it wasn't red wine. What was I drinking?
No, I think you had an edible for that one.
No, I definitely did not because I've ran out a long time ago. But if you need some edibles, go to viahemp.com and use code wifeofcrime1 for some monies off.
Well, they're going to hear the ad for it.
Well, shout out to them because they signed up for a year and you guys must be buying it because they renewed for another year.
Yeah, they renewed as our sponsor for a whole year and we love them. But yeah, maybe it was whiskey then. I don't know what you were drinking. I can't keep track.
I probably was risky with the whiskey.
Maybe, but people loved the episode and they said Vintage Russ was back. That his personality really shined through for that one. But the documentary is so good. The whole case is fascinating and highly suggest it. So if you're interested in hearing our coverage of it, definitely go to patreon.com/wifeofcrimepod at the $5 tier. All of our true crime and chill episodes are there.
And if you don't like ads, go over there too, because then you don't got to listen to no ads.
Yeah, except when Russ randomly talks about them in the middle of the episode.
Well, you got to look out for the homies. So, every week, you guys know, I do the Patreon shout-outs. You join, and I say what up. This week's Patreons are Megan, Shelly, Katie, Angela, Lucy, Aisha, Linda, D's.
Someone wrote D's. I love that.
Yeah, like D's nuts. Katie, Yeka, Cecilia, Gabby, Great Googly Moogly. I hate that I have to say this weird shit. Michelle, Jamie, and Brian. So, cheers to you guys.
Cheers.
I got my drink.
I have a challenge for people. If you sign up for Patreon, think of a really annoying thing that Russ will have to say on the show. I think that would make it really fun.
You know what the most annoying thing probably would be to say?
What?
Jess is right.
Imagine we have like 10 Jess is right patrons.
It really wouldn't be that annoying to me. You're the one that hates saying I'm right.
I do hate saying you're right. It's true.
All right. So now it's my other time to shine, folks. Apple, you can write a review, and then I will read the one that I like.
Yes.
So,
and he does not allow me to tell him which one to read. He takes this job very seriously, and he doesn't want my input at all.
So this one this week is from Savage Ass Ho.
That's their name, Savage Ass Ho.
Yeah.
I love that.
I like that. So it says, love, 5 stars. You're a rat.
That's it?
That's it. 5 stars. R.I.P. Big Ange, the legend.
Yeah, the legend. I mean, you do the impression of Big Ange, you're a rat, very good.
I mean, I was watching some clips of her the other day when she's talking to her son and she had like a new boyfriend and he came out of jail for like 20 years or so.
Yeah.
And
her son was like, what is he in jail for?
For murder. and then he's like, well, that doesn't mean he's a bad guy. She goes, and he bought me a puppy.
Yeah.
I love
the way
Big
she
Ange.
said it with her giant lips.
I love Big Ange.
She's the best.
Kind of reminds me of my nanny a little bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's funny.
I mean, because
with the raspy voice.
her voice wasn't that raspy, but my nanny did smoke a pack or two of cigarettes. So it was like one pack when she didn't have that much money. But then in the beginning of the month, when she get her digit, which is the check, we call it digits.
Really?
Then she would smoke 2 packs a day.
Oh, God.
And I used to,
How gangster is that she called her check the digit?
Yeah, I got to get my digit. Or like, say like the check would be coming. So back then it came in the mail. There wasn't direct deposit.
Yeah.
For all you young folks, you're like, wait, what? Mail? And not email, folks. And
snail mail.
So like they'd be waiting for the check and their check comes in 2 days or whatever. And she'd be like, it's 1 day and a wake up. And some mailmen would bring it a day or two early.
Oh, did she like
they
those
weren't
mailmen?
supposed to.
Oh.
They'd have to hold on to it and bring it the right day.
Yeah, that's why you always say 1 day and a wake up or 2 days and a wake up.
Yeah, so instead of like 2 days, oh no, it's 1 day and a wake up. Like I'm going to wake up and today is the day.
So you got that from her.
Yeah.
No, that's pretty funny. She's getting her digits. I love that.
Yeah, my digits coming.
Okay. First, I need to give a giant shout out to Myrtle. She helped me research and write this episode. She's a podcast researcher for other shows, Military Murder and Housewives of True Crime, and she's also one of our loyal patrons. This case I have today is gigantic, and it's complex. I also read a book called Road to Jonestown by Jeff Gwynne.
Or listen to the audiobook.
Well, yes, I listened to the audiobook Road to Jonestown by Jeff Gwynne.
I knew you were listening to audiobooks. Every time I try to speak to you, you had your airplane like, huh? Like French Montana.
Shut up. So Jeff Gwynne is the guy who wrote Go Down Together, the Bonnie and Clyde book that I used for our Bonnie and Clyde episode. He is a really in-depth researcher. His research is top tier. And I highly suggest, if this episode fascinates you like it fascinated me, definitely go listen to this book about this case because it's incredibly detailed. And I can't put every detail in this episode or it would be a whole series.
Yeah.
So here we go. On a few episodes, you've questioned, quote, is this the drinking the Kool-Aid cult?
That's true. That's like a big thing. That phrase gets thrown around not just by me. They're drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yes, it gets thrown around a lot. Well, I told you no, but one day I will tell you that insane story. Well, today is that day, my friend. Reverend Jim Jones and the People's Temple is an incredibly complex and mind-boggling case that tragically ends in mass suicide and murder. I say murder because unlike the Heaven's Gate cult that we covered years ago, not everyone was aware that drinking the Kool-Aid would kill them until they looked around and saw their friends, family, and children dying right before their eyes. But it was too late. They had already ingested the fatal substance, and it was only a matter of minutes before they would succumb as well. On November 18th, 1978, 909 people would lay dead in a remote settlement called Jonestown in the jungles of Guyana.
900?
909.
I thought maybe when they talk about drinking the Kool-Aid, I know people drank it and died. I thought it was probably like 20, 30 people.
No, sir.
How do you find 900 dummies?
Just listen.
I mean, I run into dummies every time I'm outside the house, but how do you find 900?
This story is crazy, and it's going to leave you having lots of questions about a lot of things. So 909 people would lay dead in a remote settlement called Jonestown in the jungles of Guyana. 9 others would be shot, and some of them died while trying to escape at Port Katuma airstrip. Of the 9 was a U.S. congressman named Leo Ryan, who flew to Guyana to help members escape. Before 9/11, this was the largest mass death in American history, and it was all led and implemented by one man. So what makes something a cult as opposed to hanging out with a group of like-minded people? Well, there's no rock-solid checklist, but there are definitely signs to look for.
Like maybe their God is currently alive.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of them. That's like one of the big differences to me between a cult and a religion.
Yes, 100%.
See, like when Jesus was alive, that probably would have been considered a cult at the moment because their God was alive.
And a lot of people didn't believe that he was really God, and that, caused a lot of problems for them. People involved in the organization might be excessively enthusiastic about their leader and follow the leader's direction without any question or critical thinking. The leader dictates how people should act, how they feel, and even how they are supposed to think, determining where they can work, where they can live, who they can live with, whether they should have children or not, isolating them from their loved ones and requiring them to spend an inordinate amount of time with the group or doing group activities. Followers might be punished for not following blindly and questioning the leader's direction.
It reminds me of some of my friends when they get a girlfriend. You don't see them no more. They follow these bitches blindly. Like, you lose friends to cults.
Well, now all your friends are married, so it doesn't matter anymore.
We've all been indoctrinated. Send help.
They could excessively task the members to perform work or participate in marathon prayer or meditation sessions. The punishments may even be physically or emotionally abusive. The leader wants to be thought of as a deity, a messiah, or that they have some special power, or that they're the only person with the ability to interpret the orders from a god. People who are on a mission to better themselves spiritually, physically, or emotionally may be more susceptible to joining cults. Another draw to these people is a deep need to have a sense of community with other like-minded individuals.
Well, welcome to if you want to join the crime family, go to patreon.com.
You can join our crime family
You can
cult.
join our crime family and get a couple hundred bonus episodes, get rid of commercials, and read Jess's notes, a.k.a. our Bible.
More often than not, it's cult leaders and their most trusted members who seek out vulnerable people. Those who are in a fragile state could be easily led into a false sense of belonging by someone with nefarious intentions.
Good word.
Statistics vary pretty widely, but articles indicate that there are between 3,000 and 10,000 cults operating in the United States at any given time. According to the International Cultic Studies Association, approximately 1% of the population has had some kind of cult involvement. While it doesn't sound like a lot, 1%.
It is.
But if you think about it, there's 340 million people in the United States, and 1% is 3.4 million.
That doesn't surprise me because I figure there's more than 3 million dummies in America.
The People's Temple is a playbook for how to form and maintain a cult. Jim Jones, as a character, is fascinating. I chose to deep dive this cult because although he did the textbook cult leader things, like claimed he was the Messiah and controlled every aspect of his members' lives, he also did a lot of good for a lot of people in the beginning.
Wow.
This story is a very slow burn. Jim Jones evolved over time into a monster, but this transformation was insidious. Throughout this case, we will wrestle with the question, was there any ounce of good in Reverend Jim Jones? It's tempting to label him as purely evil, but the truth is a bit more complicated. In his early years, Jones was a passionate advocate for racial integration and social justice at a time when very few others were.
Around what year was he doing all this?
It spans from
when he
the
started
50s to the 70s.
Oh wow, yeah. So
a very tumultuous time in America.
And that seems like a good thing, and racism and prejudice, and everyone is just as dumb as each other.
Well, you'll see he did a lot of good at that time. He opened his church to people of all backgrounds and colors, provided food, healthcare, and housing to those in need.
Healthcare, good for him.
And spoke out boldly against racial inequality during a very tense civil rights era. These actions did have real positive impact on many lives. But the darker side of his personality his obsession with control, manipulation, and eventual descent into a drug-induced paranoia and violence overshadowed whatever good he may have done. It raises a difficult question. Can someone still be seen as, quote, good if their early efforts helped people, even if it led to tragedy in the end? This is the case of Reverend Jim Jones and the People's Temple, aka Jonestown. Are you ready?
Dipset, dipset, dipset. I can't. He's Jim Jones, and I'm ready.
Okay. James Warren Jones, aka Jim Jones, was born on May 31st, 1931 in Indiana by his parents James Thurman and Lynetta Jones. His dad, James, was a World War I veteran who had been exposed to mustard gas. Do you know what mustard gas was?
It hurts.
So mustard gas was a chemical weapon that was usually used by the Germans. They used it the most. And it caused horrible side effects like large, painful blisters on the skin and mucous membranes and severe respiratory issues. I think it was like 17 to 20,000 of our U.S. soldiers came back with tons and tons of health problems from mustard gas.
So it's chemical warfare.
It is, yes. A lot of men that were exposed came home from the war disabled due to lung injuries. And Jim's father was a disabled vet who lived off of his disability payments, which weren't much. He also spent most of his time at a local bar, drinking away his military pension, which caused him to gain the reputation as the town drunk. Lynetta Jones, his mom, had a reputation for being pretty eccentric and full of dramatic flair. She was known for making over-the-top claims about herself, like saying she had royal ancestry or that she'd survived near-death experiences in the most unbelievable ways.
Kind of like being a self-proclaimed profiler.
Yeah, kind of like that. She loved to talk about how special she was, even insisting that she was so smart, most people just couldn't keep up with her. On top of that, she was a proud atheist, which definitely stood out in small-town Indiana at the time. She didn't just quietly keep her beliefs to herself either. She'd go on and on about how religion was nonsense and how her son Jim was destined for something much bigger than the church crowd could ever understand. A lot of people saw her as strange or even delusional, but her larger-than-life personality clearly left a mark on Jim and how he saw himself later. Lynetta married James Sr. because he came from a prominent family, and she wasn't necessarily in love with him. He was actually old enough to be her father. He was like twice her age, but he came from a prominent family. He was one of 13 children. His family was large and wealthy, so Lynetta took this opportunity to marry a man that would give her the potential for the greatness she thought she deserved while putting in little effort. Unfortunately for her, however, she was mistaken. Yes, marrying into a prominent family had its perks. They bought them a home and helped them with food and some other finances.
Wait, they bought them a house?
Yeah, they were wealthy.
Wow.
They bought them a house and they helped them with food and other finances. But James's father and siblings told Lynetta, this is not a free ride. Like, we'll help you and James and little Jimmy, but you must work. You can't just be a stay-at-home mom while we pay for everything. So Lynetta had to get a job. She reluctantly took a position at a local factory, working long hours. Feeling sorry for herself and angry with the state of her life, she decided if she wasn't going to be happy, she was going to be different. So she smoked in public, wore pants, cursed like a sailor. She didn't care what anyone thought of her.
So she was the originator of feminism.
She was a self-indulged, narcissistic woman with little to no maternal instincts, which left little Jimmy most days just fending for himself out in town alone. Lynn, Indiana was a small town, all white, with some mom-and-pop stores and farms. And the town had many men's social clubs. So they had a Redwood Lodge, they had the Freemasons, and the Klan. In the 1920s...
The KKK, you mean?
Yes. In the 1920s, The KKK's power base moved to Indiana, and it became the largest organization in the state. The membership went from 445 to 118,000 men.
Know what I learned about the Klan?
What?
One of their biggest challenges was in the hoods, trying to get the eyes holes in the right place.
You're just saying that from Django.
I learned that on Django. Like, who cut the holes in this mask? Like, my wife did it. You watch your mouth. I can't see shit.
They did a really good job in that movie of turning them into a total joke.
But they are.
No, I know. They are a joke. Well, they're not really a joke. The Klan was brutal in a lot of states and, tortured Black people. So
yes, it's not.
They were not a joke. They weren't actually a joke, but I'm glad that the movie made them look like a joke.
No, it's not a joke, but their mentality and how they feel is a joke, and they're clowns. When you look at them like these, first of all, being racist is broke energy. If you have a lot of money,
yeah,
you don't give a fuck about what color someone is. You're just like, oh, let's make some money or something. Like,
yeah,
that's broke energy. Like, I'm on video games and someone will talk racist shit. I'm like, tell me you're broke without telling me you're broke.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're racist.
Yeah, no, it's true. And those stupid hoods and they are clowns, totally. So the Klan was everywhere. Since Black folks only made up 3% of the state of Indiana, the KKK wasn't out there actually pushing their racial hatred agenda. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure if there were more Black people there, they would have. But instead, they weaved their way into the fabric of the community, paying for community programs, events, and education, pushing white supremacy, while still asserting that they had good Christian values. Lynn, Indiana, like most small towns in the Midwest and the South, had a church on every corner. You had your Methodist, Episcopalian, Nazarene, Quaker, the Church of Christ, just to name a few. Everyone in town went to church on Sunday. Everyone except Lynetta, James, and Jim. His mom, Lynetta, was a proud atheist, like I said. She didn't believe in a sky god, and her neighbors were sure that she was going to hell straighter than a bird could fly.
I've never seen a bird fly straight.
Since little Jimmy was left to fend for himself most days, a lot of the town women felt sorry for the boy. They would invite him over for lunch or give him cookies and cakes. Knowing how big of a weirdo his mother was, these women started doting on him, showing him the love and attention they were sure his mother wasn't giving him. I mean, he was little. He was like 6, 7, 8, at this time. This is when Jim first learned the art of manipulation. As a small boy, he started learning how to act and what to say to get food and treats.
He's basically our dog Tyson.
Yeah.
He's like a shelter dog that you got for $20.
Yeah, right. He would listen to these women talk and remember their names and the details about their conversations. He would find common interests with them. He would charm them by telling them how much he loved their cooking, saying that her food was the most delicious he ever tasted. So all the women in town felt like she had this special, motherly bond with little Jimmy. One woman named Myrtle Kennedy would be the town mother that became the closest with little Jimmy Jones. Myrtle was a Nazarene woman. They're one of the strictest of the Christian denominations. They don't believe in drinking, no dancing, no wearing skirts above the knee. They wear long sleeves all the time. Super, super strict.
It's related to the religion that the cult I was in as a kid.
Oh, okay.
My mom thought French braids were for older people.
Really?
It was too, her and the weirdo she went to church with.
They weren't allowed to have French braids?
No, it was it's too mature. It was there were so many stupid fucking things, and I'm in there 10 years old. You're so fucking dumb.
That's crazy. French braids is wild. That's a little crazy.
Everything was dumb. First of all, they you know how you knew it was weird? This house had sheetrock walls that weren't painted. All they had was the spackling on it. You lazy fuck, you didn't even paint your wall.
It's crazy.
Anybody could paint.
So Myrtle was a very sweet woman, though. She was a Nazarene woman, so she was super strict, but she was really sweet. And she fed the needy. She was incredibly compassionate. She did a lot for the needy people in the community. She was also determined to get Jimmy to her church. She would tell Jimmy Bible stories and was so excited when he agreed to go to the Nazarene church with her on Sundays. He loved it. He quoted scripture and would discuss the pastor's message with her, and she was ecstatic. This didn't last, however. A few months later, Jimmy decided to visit all the churches in town to see what they were all about. And over the next few years, he would join every single church in town, and he would be baptized at all of them, spending months at a time in each one, soaking in the message, but also paying close attention to how the pastor delivered it.
Well, he wants the praise, like people like, oh, look how good you're doing, I bet.
Yeah, so that's good that you picked up on that, because there are things that we talk. So when you listen to the whole entire story of Jim Jones as a character, right? He's a real person, but when you look at him as a character of a cult leader and you pay attention to who he becomes as a man and you think back to who he was as a kid, there's a lot of interesting things that you notice in his childhood that led to what he became.
There's a really interesting series on Netflix, like How to Start a Cult. So good. It shows like cult leaders and basically go watch it, folks.
Yeah, it's really good. I know which one you're talking about. As Jimmy grew up, it was apparent to the townspeople of Lynn, Jimmy was an odd boy, just like his parents. But to them, it was pretty harmless because at least he was going to church. He cried a lot, which boys weren't supposed to do back then, right? He also cursed all the time. And the other children coming from these conservative homes would get very uncomfortable. But Jimmy would smile when he saw their discomfort. He would steal candy bars from local shops, and his mother, instead of disciplining him, would just go to the stores once a week and pay for whatever Jimmy stole that week, which to me is pretty interesting. Like, no discipline. She just would walk and be like, okay, what did my son steal this week? And give him money.
It seems as if she just didn't have time for him. Like, I don't got time for you.
Yeah, she did.
For this stupid shit.
One night, Jimmy led a group of kids to a local casket company. It was late and the place was closed, but like everywhere else in Lynn, they didn't lock doors. He told all the kids to climb into the caskets and lay there so they could see what it feels like to be dead. He claimed that he had special powers from God and told all the children around him that he could read minds and he could even fly.
Wow, he figured out who was dumb right away. Because when I was a kid, somebody says that.
None of the kids believed him.
But did they lay in the casket?
Well, they got in the casket, but then they got bored and they got out. Like, none of them, everyone thought he was a weird kid.
Oh.
Yeah. He conducted animal funeral services. He would go around and pick up roadkill, and then he would construct a whole funeral service for them. And like I said, he's about 8 years old at this time doing all this weird stuff.
I ain't mad at him. I always feel bad when I'm driving and see roadkill.
I'm not weirded out by the roadkill thing.
Well, he's trying to mimic what he sees at church.
Yeah. When Jimmy was 10, America entered World War II. And this is when Jimmy's new obsession began. While other young boys were patriotic and would pretend to be American soldiers fighting the evil Nazis, Jimmy became completely obsessed with Adolf Hitler. The showmanship, how he kept the audience engaged, hanging off of his every word.
Well, he was high on ketamine and all kind of shit like that. Amphetamines, like he was all on speed and shit.
Yeah. Jimmy studied Hitler intensely. He idolized him as a leader. He didn't care much about Hitler's message at all, but more about the way he delivered it. He tried to make some young local boys pretend to be Nazis, but being from patriotic households, these boys refused. He instead gathered up all of his younger cousins and took them to the woods and made them goose step, which was the signature Nazi march.
Oh.
When they didn't do it perfectly to Jimmy's satisfaction, he grabbed a switch from a tree and began beating all the little boys. This was the first time Jim realized that in order to control a group, you need to go after the smaller, younger, and more vulnerable.
Oh, shit.
They will listen to your orders, and they'll allow you to punish them. As Jimmy started high school, he still was looked at as an odd kid, but because of his dysfunctional home life, people excused some of his bad behaviors. He would get dressed up in a collared shirt, slacks, and tie every day for school. And he only talked about two things: his religion and sex. When he wasn't preaching to his fellow classmates all about the good Lord,
He was jacking off.
he was talking about sex in excessive detail.
Well, you're young and horny, but you don't have to, like, be the weirdo.
You're weird talking about it all the time.
I don't know if we all have this. I was going to say we all have it, but like I have friends that always send me these stupid ass sex memes, or like, I don't know, other men probably have this, like the older dudes on Facebook. They'll send you like pictures of these naked women. Like, yeah, bro, we could all see naked women. You didn't you didn't discover the titty. It's so fucking weird.
Yeah, so he weirded a lot of people out with him constantly talking in excessive detail about sex. But that and his religion were the only two things he spoke about. He also loved to debate his teachers. He was a know-it-all, and he would challenge them on things even when he was completely wrong. And he'd never admit it. He never played sports, but he ended up organizing a baseball league. And he actually organized and ran an entire baseball league, and he coached one of the teams.
Yeah, I ain't mad at that, because a lot of people, if you can't play a sport, you coach it. Like, look at a lot of these coaches in the NBA. It's like a 5'9" white dude. Like, you may not be able to play, but you know about it.
Well, his players on his team...
Shout out to Tom Thibodeau, the coach of the Knicks.
Yeah. His players on his team actually really liked him because he would also record all of their stats. He kept track of all of their stats and put them on these cards for them, so all the boys had like a record of their stats.
That's so cool.
So one night, a bunch of the players on his team were at his house for a team meeting, and suddenly, randomly, he brought out a stray puppy that he found. And the boys watched as Jimmy lured the puppy with a treat over a trap door. While the puppy was standing on it, he opened the door, and the boys looked in horror as the puppy fell to the floor below and got injured. The puppy died from his injuries.
I could kill Jim.
And from then on, the boys refused to play on Jimmy's team, and the entire league fell apart.
They should have jumped him.
Yeah, they all just left the house and they refused to play in the league, and the whole thing fell apart.
They should have threw him down that motherfucking basement or whatever it was.
Well, Jimmy wasn't always cruel to animals. It was actually something that was pretty few and far between, but it did happen on occasion, and there's really no explanation why. It's not like it's something that he did all the time. It was weird because he would hold all these funeral services for animals, and then later in his life, he had like multiple animal rescues.
Wow.
So it's really odd. Eventually, as Jimmy's father grew more and more sick, Lynetta started having an affair with another man, not surprising. And when that relationship ended, she decided to leave Big Jim and move to Richmond, Indiana, and Jimmy came with her. He was a senior in high school, and he made a few friends in this new school. All of his friends were in the Christian Youth Fellowship group. And these kids really liked Jim Jones, and they nicknamed him Jonesy. So they would discuss Christianity amongst each other, and they decided that Christian communism was the best way to live. They weren't talking about government communism, but instead that the church should have to follow that way of life. What belonged to the church belonged to everyone in it. They believe Christians should help all people, no matter what race. And Jim really started to get down with this message. Eventually, he got a job working as an orderly in Reed Memorial Hospital. And he did a lot of jobs that are similar to like a nurse's aide. He would toilet and clean the patients. He would help get them dressed and freshen up their linens. And as an orderly, he also had to clean and prepare dead bodies to go to the morgue and dispose of amputated limbs. Jim loved his job, and the patients loved Jim. He remembered all their names, all their family members' names. He was super friendly. He made jokes with them like he was just a model employee. And he made all the patients feel really special and taken care of. One night in 1948, Jim was called to help clean the body of a young pregnant woman who had just died. A senior nursing student named Marceline Baldwin was the nurse he was helping. And he was very solemn and respectful. And Marceline was incredibly impressed when she saw Jim go up to the dead woman's family and offer them condolences and comfort. The two of them started dating and then married in 1949 when he was only 18. And it's almost an eerie foreshadowing that the two of them would fall in love over a dead body. As the years pass, we will see that Marceline was the woman behind the man. She wasn't always happy with his decisions, but she allowed him to spiral into this monster that he became. Jim idolized Hitler, and Marceline was his Eva Braun. Marceline would die along with him and the 900 others in Jonestown 30 years from now. Marceline was a preacher's daughter, and she was a devout Christian. She believed her new husband was sent to her by God. But shortly after the marriage, he confessed his dirty little secret. He didn't actually believe in her God at all, but only followed the teachings of Jesus and thought that most of the Bible was a sham. The two newlyweds had many fights about this over the first year, but Marceline stuck it out. She saw her husband begin to take on more of a socialism belief system. And he truly worried and was genuinely concerned for Black people in this country. Although Richmond, Indiana was only 15% African American and wasn't overtly racist like, say, Alabama, the racism was still palpable. Black people were still viewed as less than, and segregation was an absolute. With his fascination for religions, it wasn't much of a surprise that after high school, he went to Butler University and then entered the ministry. He may not believe in the same sky god as Marceline. I say sky god with quotes because that's what he always called it, sky god.
I heard this one theory at one point from someone. There's 1 billion religions, that maybe it's the same God and everyone just met him at a different time.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, he may not believe in the same, quote, sky god as Marceline did, but he decided to use his Christian message as a way to push his own agenda. All people are created equal, and it is every Christian's responsibility to help and take care of the poor and less fortunate. Which sounds good.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
He was sick and tired of all these preachers talking about what you get after you die and not doing a damn thing to help the needy on earth now. Jim was thrilled when in 1952 the Methodist Church made a national decree about their change in some of their positions. They now support the mission to end poverty, the right of collective bargaining, free speech, prison reform, and racial integration. The Methodist Church publicly reemphasized these beliefs, and this is when Jim decided he would become a Methodist minister. Marceline was so excited. This was what she hoped for, to be a pastor's wife. This was a dream come true. He was a student pastor in a Methodist church in the early 1950s, but on some Sundays and weeknights, he would go to Black churches. And he'd bring Marceline with him.
He might have fell out.
Well,
they have the most fun at the Black church.
They do. They were usually the only white people there, and these services were vastly different from a traditional Methodist service. They have lively music.
They have rhythm.
They dance. They have rhythm. They clap.
Oh, and you ever been to a white church that everyone claps off?
Black churches are so fun.
Your mom has a clap that goes for everything.
It's true. They yell out while the pastor's preaching. Black churches are so hype and so fun.
Yeah, more lively.
Definitely. They also didn't have time limits. Everybody knows those. If you go to a Black church service, you might be there for hours. They didn't have time limits. They just went on as long as the Holy Ghost was in the house.
Raise the roof.
And people loved it. Jim loved it. He loved the people, and he fit in right away. In 1952, Reverend Jim Jones, who had been preaching at a Methodist church, decided he wanted to build a community center for children, and he wanted the board of directors to be made up of all different denominations.
Respect.
He told the community leaders he wanted to partner up with anyone else who was equally devoted to helping the unfortunate. This was unheard of at the time. People of different Christian denominations coming together for greater good of the community, it just didn't happen very often. In the meantime, Jim also started attending local revivals. You know what a revival is? It's like a couple days long, and sometimes it'll be different pastors traveling around. A lot of Pentecostal pastors do it. And he would attend these local revivals, and he became very fascinated by the healing services and the charismatic Pentecostal preachers who claimed to be gifted with the ability to heal and intercede.
Wait, could they help people walk?
They can't. Well, they claim to be able to.
I'm in.
Jim started preaching at these revivals, claiming he too can intercede on the congregation's behalf. He would mingle with the crowd ahead of time, and he would eavesdrop on conversations, taking notes in his head on some of the things that people were having problems with. And then, when it was his turn to preach, he'd point out a few people in the crowd by name, and he'd tell them God knows their struggles. And he'd specifically name the struggle that they were having. He told them God was going to fix it.
So he's like a medium without the big hair that looks really hard like a helmet.
Yes, he's like a medium, but he was fake, obviously. He would go around in the crowd in the beginning and listen in on their conversations to get ideas of who's going through what, and then, he would call it out in front of everybody. He started to gain a reputation of being a healer. And as time went on, the healings became more and more elaborate. Years down the line, years later, he would have his most loyal followers act as plants in the crowd, gathering information to be used during his sermon when he pretended to be an intercessor. He also would perform elaborate healings. One of them was he had 2 church members who were down with the trick, and they would go to the bathroom and they would return. This is so disgusting.
With poop on them.
No, listen, it gets crazy. They would return from the bathroom with poop.
I was right.
You were right. Mixed with chicken guts.
Who's the profiler?
They would have poop mixed with chicken guts. And he would claim that one of them had cancer and that he just forced that cancer out of their body and they passed it.
And then they would air fry it.
The person holding the shitty chicken guts would walk through the aisle showing it to the church.
I'd be like, get the fuck away from me, bro.
And he convinced most of his loyal followers that these type of lies were worth it because his true message was about racial equality and socialism. And he wanted to reel people in with God and then introduced his socialist agenda once they were already invested.
Oh my goodness.
So all the lies and trickery were okay because it was for the greater cause, for the bigger cause.
Yeah, but if people are just joining your cause because you're lying, they're not really down with the cause.
They're not. And that's the thing. I mean, this, like I said, we're still talking about the beginning of Jim Jones. These elaborate healings started happening years later once he kind of gained a big reputation. But that's just an example of the type of healings he would do.
His cause is for him. It's not for anything.
No, his cause is for racial equality and to live in be part of socialism and to form this like utopia where everybody shares everything and kumbaya, everything's amazing and no one is discriminated against or segregated or anything like that.
Well, that's a good cause. I mean, there are some socialist things that I believe are good. Like, I think everyone could be educated and healthy. So let's, that's pretty cool. Besides that, you got to earn your own money. But if you have smart people that are healthy, it makes for a better place.
Yeah, and I agree.
And it helps everyone.
Like I said, and we're going to keep going back and forth. For me, I went back and forth a lot. Like, he does a lot of good things, but he's also lying and deceptive and self-serving as well.
Wait.
And it's really hard to find the line of when he's doing good and when he's just doing good to serve himself.
I have a question. So they came out of bathroom with poop, right?
Poop and chicken guts mixed together. Like in a napkin. It wasn't like...
Did they poop in a napkin? Where did the poop come from?
Yes, they pooped, mixed it with chicken guts, in a napkin, came through the aisles, showed the people that this was like the cancer that came out of their body. And then he would say, don't look at it too hard. We don't want it to infect you. I'm protecting you all from this cancer. And he claimed that he rid it from that person's body. But they were pretending, the people who, they were down with it.
Well, they do have a power. Being able to poop on command is special. Like, if you told me to poop right now, I can't. Like, it has to be time.
It's
like,
true.
People could time their poops.
I guess they would time it. Yeah.
That's special. It's a shitty situation.
It is. So one of my new goals is to drink 2 Stanleys full of water. That's 80 ounces of water every day. I'm notoriously horrible at drinking water, so I'm always looking for ways to make drinking water easier. Having safe, clean water is the last thing you want to worry about, but unfortunately, according to extensive research by the Environmental Working Group, 3 out of 4 homes in America have harmful contaminants in their tap water. That's why you have to check out AquaTrue. AquaTrue purifiers use a 4-stage reverse osmosis purification process, and their countertop purifiers work with no installation or plumbing. It removes 15 times more contaminants than the ordinary pitcher filters, and are specifically designed to combat chemicals in our tap water. The filters are affordable and long-lasting, no changing filters every 2 to 3 months. AquaTrue filters last from 6 months to 2 years. I can seriously taste the difference compared to my old water filter. I got it delivered straight to my home, and it was super easy to set up. AquaTrue comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee and even makes a great gift. Today, our listeners receive 20% off any AquaTrue purifier. Just go to aquatrue.com, that's AQUATRU.com, and enter promo code WIFEOFCRIME1 at checkout. That's 20% off any AquaTrue water purifier when you go to aquatrue.com, use promo code WIFEOFCRIME, WIFEOFCRIME1 at checkout. This episode is sponsored by HelloFresh. When I get home after a long workday, I do not feel like figuring out what to cook for dinner. And Russ is good at a lot of things, but cooking is not one of them. That's why we love HelloFresh. HelloFresh's new ready-made meals go from the fridge to your fork in just 3 minutes. It's the same high-quality ingredients and restaurant-worthy flavor you expect from HelloFresh, just none of the work. They also have 15-minute meals that are done in just 3 simple steps, so you can eat better this year without all the hassle. Everything is pre-portioned out, and the instructions are super simple, so you can't mess up, and it actually makes cooking a lot more enjoyable. We've partnered with HelloFresh so you can get up to 10 free meals and a free high-protein item for life at HelloFresh.com/wifeofcrime10FM. 1 item per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as discount on first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. That's up to 10 free HelloFresh meals. Just go to HelloFresh.com/wifeofcrime10FM. So Reverend Jim Jones was revered in the Black community. Here's this white guy stepping in and preaching a message similar to Dr. King and other great Black leaders and preachers of the time. At a time when very few whites were vocal and racial tension was incredibly high. He founded a Pentecostal church called Wings of Deliverance in 1955 in Indiana. It eventually became known as the People's Temple, with no apostrophe before the S, because according to Jones, who pushed socialism,
No ownership.
no one owned it.
Well, at least he knew grammar.
He did. Jim Jones was inspired by a charismatic Black preacher from Harlem named George Baker, also known as Father Divine, who was the leader of the Universal Peace Mission movement that was founded in the 1920s. And he was also a cult leader in his own right. Father Divine ran his church with a socialist structure. His members worked for little to no money. They combined all their resources, and then everyone benefited from the pool of funds and goods. While that sounds like an idyllic life, the darker side of Father Divine was that he claimed that he was God, and he pretended to have supernatural powers. He claimed that he could heal the sick and dying, but when his wife, known as Mother Divine, got cancer and died, he needed an explanation. So after her passing, he married a young white woman and claimed that his wife's spirit was reincarnated into this woman, and she is now Mother Divine 2.0.
He done got himself a snow bunny.
He did. And she was from Canada.
Oh, that's an Arctic snow bunny. Like, that's like extra white.
He did. He got himself a snow bunny.
Good for him, eh?
In the later 50s, Jim Jones made visits to meet with Father Divine and learn more about how he led his multiracial congregation.
He was thinking, how do you get all these bitches?
100%, because up until he married this woman, Father Divine was sleeping around. He had like a harem. And then he married, his wife died. He claimed that she was reincarnated. There's Mother Divine 2.0. And then he ended up leaving, when he died, he ended up leaving his entire church and everything to Mother Divine 2.0.
Wow.
So this white lady inherited it all. She just had to pretend that she had an older, black woman's spirit inside of her.
So she had a black soul.
She did.
Wow.
Something that made Jim Jones dislike mainstream churches was segregation. And
yeah, segregation's whack.
Yeah, and it was followed in all the congregations all over the country. There's white churches and black churches, and they really didn't mix.
Well, I guess people tend to go to the church in their neighborhood, and neighborhoods are pretty segregated. Not as much in New York. Like, I didn't realize segregation that much until now that I'm here in Maryland.
Yeah, Maryland is a lot more segregated.
You don't see black and white people hanging out together here. Like, if I go to a place, it's all white people, all black people. Like, you don't see, like, black and a white person walking down the street or, like,
not as often.
Together.
Yeah.
I haven't yet.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
It is. Maryland is still pretty segregated. I mean, we definitely, when you leave New York, you really see, once you go farther south, that segregation is still a thing. And it's not even like forced segregation, obviously. It's just who you are living around and hang out with.
Well, you live where your parents have already lived.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of just keeps happening.
Mm-hmm.
The best places are the ones where everyone's integrated because you get the most culture and you're exposed to more people. And
yeah, that's why New York is a melting pot. And, it's a cool place to grow up. I would think as a kid, it'd be a cool place to grow up.
But it's fine. I live there. I don't know how cool it is. It's fine. I mean, it's obviously better than everywhere else. But I don't know how bad other places are.
So Jim had this deep compassion for the poor and oppressed, and for anyone who was discriminated against if they weren't white. He preached about racial equality and integration, and he put his money where his mouth was. He and Marceline adopted a daughter named Agnes, who was Native American. They also adopted 3 kids from Korea named Stephanie, Lou, and Suzanne. And in 1961, they became the first white couple in Indianapolis to adopt a black child.
So far, it seems like they're following what they preach.
They're practicing what they preach.
There you go.
So they adopted this black child, his name, and they named him James Warren Jones Jr. They named him after Jim Jones.
Was it a baby?
Yeah, he was
was he a baby?
He was a black baby, yeah.
Wow.
They also had a biological son named Stephen Gandhi.
Gandhi.
Yeah, and adopted a white boy from a woman within their church named Tim. So if you're keeping count, that's 6 kids for what Jim Jones called his rainbow family.
I always thought, like, man, you know what's so crazy? If you start a church and you get followers that are dedicated, they give you 10% of their income.
But that's not how Jim Jones' church worked.
No?
No. Jim actually was not a rich pastor. He wore nice suits later down the line, and he ended up becoming more flashy and started stealing things from people. But in this time, in the beginning, he pushed a socialist agenda where everyone gave to the church and the church gave back to the community.
Wow.
That's what he wanted in the beginning.
I like that, though. But I wonder why it has to come from a church and not just like, this is what I do for people in the name of being a good person, not because a higher power is telling me this is coming from within me.
Okay, well, if you really break it down, right, if you're looking at him from a cult leader perspective, he's going after a disenfranchised group of people who need a community, who need to feel seen. He's a white person specifically targeting Black community members, giving them hope, giving them a purpose, and telling them, if you come with me, I will take care of you. And he does. So yeah, he was practicing what he preached. He had his rainbow family, that he called it. You know, he said that integration is more of a personal thing for him, and it's a question of his son's future. He was talking about his son, Jim, yeah. Many people to this day question his motivation for adopting all these kids. Like, was he truly passionate about it? Or was he keeping up with this image that he's building? You have to remember, this is over a span of 30 years. This is a slow movement into something sinister. In the beginning, did he have goodness? Or was this the long con?
Well, I don't know if a long con is having 6 kids and most of them aren't yours biologically, because that's a lot of work. That isn't like you have to be very active in 6 children's lives for them to not die.
Yeah, it's true. But he also had Marceline, who was a really good mother and took really good care of her kids.
Oh, okay.
Jim was well known in the Indianapolis community for his work with homeless, and he led his church to participate in the civil rights movement. In the early 60s, he became the director of the Indianapolis Human Rights Commission. With his new title, he was a force in desegregation of public places like movie theaters, restaurants, hospitals. He would literally go into a restaurant, right, that would refuse to serve Black people. He would go in on an off hour, like after lunch, between lunch and dinner, 3 p.m., where they had slow business anyway. And he would come in by himself and say, hey, your business is slow right now. Like, why don't you serve my friends in the Black community? And they'd be like, nah, we're not interested. So then a couple days later, he'd come back with a group of Black people. And he'd sit at their counter and he'd say, hey, we're looking for lunch. Can you serve us some food? And they'd be like, nah. And they would give him like subpar bad service.
Wow.
So then he'd come back a couple days later with a bigger group. And then he would say, serve us. So then they would serve him. And then he would pretty much tell him, I can guarantee you that from the hours of your lunchtime ending to your dinner time starting, I'll have this place packed every day if you start serving my friends in the Black community. And then the restaurant owners were like, well, we're not making any money now anyway.
The universal color is green.
Exactly. And so he would...
See, but I don't know about that.
He would start convincing these...
Fuck those people. I wouldn't do that. Because, oh, you didn't want to serve us? Fuck that. We're going to start a restaurant that's good for everybody.
Well,
and I'll employ Black and white people, and we're going to start this place that's good for everybody, and these people could work here. And
well, he ended up doing that as well.
Yeah, because fuck those places that didn't want to serve. I mean, I understand the good intentions, but... fuck those places. Let them die. But
he didn't. He caused restaurants to start integrating.
I guess this good came from that. But people that feel that way, I'd rather them just go to shits.
Well, same with movie theaters. Same with hospitals. He went to the hospital.
Oh, hospitals. See, that's crazy. Now, everyone deserves health care.
They used to have Black wings and white wings in certain hospitals. They wouldn't have them on the same floor. He ended up going to the hospital and he refused treatment. And they begged him. They were like, no, you really need this surgery. I don't remember what the surgery was for or whatever. And he was like, no, I'm not having this done unless you put me on the Black floor with all the Black people. And he started really pushing this integration. And he was a force to be reckoned with, I have to say. He gave back to the community through a free restaurant that was ran through the temple. It was completely free, and people could come and get a hot meal whenever they needed it.
That sounds like what's it called that you feed the homeless?
Like a soup kitchen.
Yeah, it sounds more like a soup kitchen.
But it wasn't. It was like a cafe, and he just didn't charge anybody for it.
So far, he doesn't sound that bad. He just sounds a little weird.
Yeah, exactly. He and his wife, Marceline, also would help elderly people and people with mental illness, and they went on to open multiple assisted living facilities, and these facilities were very clean, and all reports suggest that they were really nice places.
He's taken over the world.
Well, this is just in Indianapolis, Indiana. But when an old person went into the homes, they agreed to sign over all of their assets to the People's Temple. Everything. And then the People's Temple took care of them until they died.
Doesn't sound that bad unless you're signing over millions, because it doesn't take millions to take care of me.
His church following was now growing, and the People's Temple membership became large and loyal. Many members gladly gave over most of their money they had because even though they themselves were also poor and a majority Black, they had a community now. They felt seen. They felt, taken up for by him. And they were devoted to his cause. He was a huge figure for equality. But the people who were against the civil rights movement put a target squarely on the Jones family. Marceline was spit on when she was out around town with her multiracial kids. And they even received letters saying that people were praying for Jim Jr. to die.
Don't have your kids and your wife out there dealing with that. That's why.
Well, if that wasn't enough, tensions around the world were ramping up with threats of nuclear war during the mid-60s. Jim became obsessed with the notion of nuclear war, and he decided to move the family to Brazil after reading in Esquire magazine that Brazil was the only place on the planet that had a chance of surviving a nuclear war.
I feel it.
So he left the People's Temple in the hands of a few associate pastors, and he told his congregation that he was moving to Brazil to be a missionary. They only ended up staying in Brazil for 2 years. After he realized that the people down there don't really care about his message at all, and they didn't have the same social issues as Americans, and they didn't even speak English, and he didn't speak Portuguese.
So he thought everyone around the world spoke English.
Like it was a fail. Yeah.
He's an idiot. I don't know. I guess I don't even know if there was color TVs back then, so he wasn't watching.
No, there was no color TVs back then, and half people didn't even have TVs back then.
My boy was listening to broadcast radio on PBS or some shit.
He was a nobody down there, and he quickly realized he hated being a nobody. He ended up sleeping with a Brazilian woman and having an affair.
Brazilian butt lifts.
He told his wife that this was because God told him to sleep with her and that she would...
I almost spit out my drink.
And that she would give $5,000 toward the construction of an orphanage if he had sex with her.
To the dick fund.
That's what God told him to do, so he did it. Marceline obviously wasn't happy about this, and she didn't believe it. But at this point, she's too invested. She's not leaving. She's just not leaving. After Brazil, they returned to Indianapolis, and the church had dwindled to almost nothing. The People's Temple didn't exist without Jim Jones. And that's the way he liked it. He loved being king.
Y'all need me.
The center of attention, the reason for a movement.
You need people like me.
Exactly. So he decided if he was going to grow this into a real movement, he needed to move somewhere more multicultural than Podunk, Indiana. So he and a group of followers moved to Ukiah, California, in 1965, where he founded the Redwood Valley Temple. Using the same system that he did in Indiana, he preached a charismatic message. He invited all people to his church. He performed more healings, and they got even more elaborate. One time, he had 2 followers find a woman. I don't know where they got this lady from. They roofied her. While she was passed out after drugging her, they put a cast on her leg. When she woke up, they told her that she had been in a horrible accident, but that they were going to take her to Reverend Jim Jones, who was going to heal her. In front of a huge crowd at the church, he, prayed over this lady and pretended he was doing his healing thing. They cut the cast off of her and she started running through the crowd, jumping, running through the aisles. And all the church people were amazed. And she believed it herself because she was roofied. She thought she was in a bad accident. She didn't even know, and she became one of his followers.
They're so lucky that they just found the dumbest girl in that state.
Well, she got roofied. They
No,
literally drugged her.
But she got a cast on her leg and it does, like, nothing hurts. You woke up like this?
Yeah,
Who are
she
you,
woke-
Beyonce?
She woke up. It's true. Throughout these years, he had built an inner circle, a group so enamored and devoted to him that they excused a lot of his questionable behavior because they believed in his cause so strongly. They watched him fight for the rights of so many people and help the needy so many times. Who cares if he went to fuck a lady in Brazil and cheat on his wife and lie about it?
None of my business, honestly.
Who cares if he wants to fake heal multiple people from horrible diseases like cancer? Who cares if we gotta go eavesdrop on some conversation so it looks like he's in direct communication with God? It's all okay.
Who cares
it's
if
all
he
for
makes poop chicken pies?
Yeah, it's all for the cause, right? The Joneses stayed in Ukiah until 1971, until they moved to San Francisco. He built 2 more temples, one in Los Angeles and one in San Francisco. After his move to San Francisco, Jones took on a new title. He now called himself the Prophet. And he relished in it. He was becoming obsessed with power and having thousands of people following him, hanging on to his every word. Jones preached about being a humanitarian who supported the downtrodden. His sermons against racism and discrimination brought tons of African Americans from California to his temples. He is now building actual fame.
It's kind of crazy that wherever he goes, the church gets popular.
You have to keep in mind this is a different time. He's very charismatic. He's white. He's focusing solely on Black people. And he's also focusing on liberal whites who want socialism.
I get it. But if you just erect a church in a spot, no one's going to know what's going on in there because there isn't like internet. You're not doing commercials.
No, he got media coverage. Like people knew when he was in Indianapolis, he worked for the city of Indianapolis as the humanitarian guy.
Yeah, but now he's in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
Like unless you do a commercial or something, no one knows that you're charismatic.
Well, word spread, and he became actually famous. Celebrities and political leaders came to hear the amazing Reverend Jim Jones preach. Jane Fonda, Harvey Milk, Angela Davis, Huey Newton, all loved him.
I only knew like 2 of those.
This gave him a lot of credit. And the longtime members were so proud that they had been part of this movement since the beginning.
It's kind of like when you know a band's before they get famous.
Yes.
And now when it becomes popular, like, fuck, no, I was up on this first.
Yes.
Like, I used to listen to 50 Cent.
When he was like underground. When
I got a bootleg CD for free from Bootleg, I was like, oh, this is pretty good music, the power of the dollar. And then, and then people get
100%.
popular, like, no, I've been up on this.
Exactly. So it's similar. And that's exactly how they felt. They were like, yo, I've been on this.
Yeah,
I've been part of this message.
Reminds me of Kanye, just so I could be like, you ain't up on this.
Yeah, exactly. And so they, now they have actual celebrities, actual political leaders coming to hear their pastor preach that they've been with for the last 10 years. And they devoted so much time and energy to him. So they're proven right at this point. They've been part of his inner circle now. And a lot of these longtime members are the ones that ended up making up his inner circle. And we'll see that he does form a secret group called his inner circle, and he pays them extra attention. So I'm going to play an excerpt of his sermon, one of his sermons, talking about how he healed a blind woman. And in this, you can really hear how much of a performer he was. He also spoke with Black vernacular, and you can really hear in his performance that he was appealing to the crowd. It's to a crowd that's used to Black preachers. He also took a page from Hitler's performance playbook and would change the inflection of his voice very often. First, talking slow and then yelling and loud and repeating himself to get his point across.
You know what that reminds me of? Like when you watch YouTube videos of Mr. Beast, how it's constantly zooming in, flashing to something else.
Yeah.
And it keeps you engaged. So when we do our YouTube videos, I got to figure out how to do a lot of cuts.
Exactly.
It's kind of like that. It keeps your brain with a short attention span attracted to it.
And that's one of the things that Hitler was known for in his speeches, is that he would talk calmly and then he would start yelling, and he would go back to calm and then start yelling.
Yeah, Hitler was shitty, but what he was good at captivating people,
and
keeping them engaged.
And in the beginning of, we talked a lot about Hitler in our other episode about Adolf Eichmann, but in the beginning of Hitler's rise to rule, a lot of Germans loved him. I mean, he started off fixing their economy. There were many Germans that loved what Hitler was doing.
I wonder if the mustache started by messing up when he was shaving. Because there has been times where I'm shaving and I'm like, oh fuck, now I gotta shave my beard off. And then he just left the little part.
He just left it and it became his signature.
I wonder if that's how it came about.
Yeah. So in this recording, he also exclusively talks about how awesome and amazing he is. And he really pushes that he and his church is the way to get these people out of the hell they're living on earth and to a promised land. Okay?
Okay.
If you're the temple of the Holy Ghost, you're the body of God. The Holy Ghost is God's Spirit. So I'm just manifesting what you've been talking about. And I shall close. Last night we just healed the sick, and we healed a plenty. Yeah. All up and down these aisles. The blindness, and that's the most beautiful thing. There were so many blind healed in our last South meeting. It was, my heart thrills. Couldn't see. Dark. Some could only see a shade of light, and they could define pencils and describe in detail from the back of the auditorium. Sister in the Sacramento meeting could describe to the back of the auditorium. She told the numbers of the fingers that I had in the sequence, and I'd change them all around, and she'd keep right up with it. Been blind for 12 long years. I mean, she couldn't see anything. Oh, whatsoever things I do are true, and they're beautiful and honest and lovely, and of good report, and they're pure. Why don't you see God? Why don't you see God? Brown and black young men and women, first place they have to go if they're homeless is to CYA. We're taking them in. We've not turned away one. We took in a youngster this week. If he hadn't have been taken in by us, he'd violated no law, but they said there's no other place for him to go but to prison. In our time, I feed the hungry, I clothe the naked. Upstairs is a little puppy. We've got a little cat in here that's been, a mother rejected it because she had too many, and we're nursing it because of the spirit that's in me. And I believe that you've got to create a sensitivity to life if you want the 100-fold ministry. If you say, I'm not going to live like that, fine. Then you live the way you please. Guard yourself. Say, I got to have meat. Keep on gorging yourself. Actually, the best way you could have long life, I've been saying it for years, is to starve yourself. Now the scientists came out this past week and confirmed another thing that I'd said, that people who starve themselves would live a third life longer. They'd live a third as much again as they ordinarily do if they lived on a starvation diet all their time. But you've got to fill yourself full till you're so fat that you're going to have strokes, occlusions. It's amazing that I've kept you from dying, because you eat like hogs. You eat slop. You eat slop that a pig would turn his nose up at. Guard yourself on all these things, and I've got diets here through my nurses available to you, the medical people that work here voluntarily. We've offered them to you, just as the district attorneys who are in our church, and work free, give you legal services, free. We give counseling on their off time, spend their weekends and their nights. So our nurses have it, and you keep eating like pigs. You've got to get that weight down, because you're not just working yourself to death. You're working yourself to be like that woman, paralyzed till she couldn't move. And if you don't keep my sayings, you can't expect me to bring you out of the mess when you won't listen to me. I have the cares of the world on me. I once was a man in the 200s till I combusted into the godship degree. Mother Eternal can tell you when I was over 200. Staff can tell you when I was 210, 218 pounds. But when I combusted into the godship degree, I had to do away with that flesh. That's mortality's version. I had to extremiate it. After 3 days, you won't feel it if you go on a fast with a multiple vitamin and flush yourself with the procedure I've already recommended. It's on free riding for you if you just ask. I'm here to bring you to good health. But you cannot be to good health. Do you know the system has provided the right kind of foods to get the poor in a state of mind that they will not be able to think? They see that you get the worst kind of foods in these ghetto markets. They see that you get the weak old foods. They see that you get the worst kind of meats with the preservatives in imbalance. I know this because I've got food store managers in my church. They tell about the stuff that's done to the poor. It would cause the hair to rise on the back of your neck. They want to keep you in physical lacks and chemical imbalance so you will not be able to hear the truth and come out of your poverty and your misery and your terrible oppression. I am here, the Spirit of Christ, to set you free, to deliver you from your captivity, to set you that are bound at freedom and at liberty.
So, that's a little taste of good old Jimbo Jones.
My boy said, fuck these fatties.
No, what he was saying was, when you're poor in this country, they give you the worst food.
Well, he has a point with that.
He does. Well, I think the point of his message, as we've talked about this whole time, is he's trying to tell them the government doesn't care about you.
True.
People don't care about you.
True.
They're giving you the worst food. They're giving you the worst of everything. You're getting poisoned. But if you come with me, I'm going to give you free health care. I'm going to give you free legal services. I'm going to take care of you. I'm your savior. And he preyed on these people who are vulnerable and disenfranchised and persecuted against in our society.
He didn't like thick like we like them in the Bronx, though.
He didn't.
We like some jiggle in the Bronx.
So as I said, to his loyal followers, all their devotion was paying off because he was becoming famous. But things were getting incredibly dark and disturbing under the surface. At first, the group looked like a progressive, racially integrated church focused on social justice, and that was part of the appeal. But as Jim Jones gained more power, the vibe shifted hard, and punishments for even small acts of disobedience or questioning him got downright disturbing. By the early 1970s, Reverend Jones started using methamphetamines to stay awake. And this quickly became a full-blown meth addiction. He would use Quaaludes to come down after staying awake for days at a time.
I always hear about Quaaludes. What's a Quaalude?
Quaalude is like a tranquilizer.
But what does it do to a person? And if it's a tranquilizer, is it used for animals at first?
No, it's like it makes you go to sleep. It's like a sleep aid or anti-anxiety, but if you take it at high doses. They used to prescribe Quaaludes all the time to like stay-at-home moms and wives back in the 50s, but now they don't really prescribe Quaaludes anymore. But do you remember the movie Wolf of Wall Street?
Yeah, so I just don't know what they are.
But you remember in Wolf of Wall Street where he like couldn't even get out of the car because he took so many Quaaludes and he was like on the ground?
Well, that's me now trying to get in my car. You ever see him trying to get in the Lambo and he's like dragging himself in?
Yeah, so
that became my real life.
Oh God, for us.
To get in my car.
Stop.
Oh, it's true.
So that's
I fall and I can't get up.
So that's what Quaaludes would do to you. Like
okay.
it relaxes you. So he would use methamphetamines. He would use meth to stay awake for days on end. And then he would use Quaaludes to go to sleep because he would be awake for days. Okay. Around this time is when he began wearing sunglasses all the time, even inside, to hide the way his eyes looked.
So the thing about that is you may be hiding your drug eyes, but now people are judging you for a different reason.
For wearing sunglasses inside.
But you know what? I did have a time where I judged someone wrongly.
Were they blind?
So I was at a bar. I was bartending.
Uh-huh.
And there was this fella. He looked, good shape, whatever. He was wearing some sunglasses at the bar, and I didn't say nothing. But I'm just like, what a douche, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
But then it wound up as we're talking. His eyes got messed up when he was at war. He was a veteran, so when he took off his glasses, his pupils was super weird or sensitive. Whatever happened to him, but it happened at war, and I could see it.
Aw.
So, like...
Can't be quick to judge people, Russ.
I know I'm Russ the Judgerer. I got
Arr.
that time. That's when I was bartending at Dave and Buster's.
And you felt bad.
Where the secret sauce is mayo and mustard.
And you felt bad about it.
I was like, damn, I always judge people for that shit.
Yeah.
But you know what? I know a lot of people that I know that go in a club and wear sunglasses.
Yeah.
Or a bar, and it's nighttime, and they don't have anything wrong with them. So 99% of the time, you're just trying to look cool.
Yeah, definitely. And in this case, Jim Jones wasn't trying to look cool. He was trying to hide his drug eyes. At this point, the temple members had become so devout and loyal to Jim Jones, blacks believing that he had saved them from racial persecution and whites aligning with his socialist message, they would start to do everything he asked of them. They gave all their money and belongings to the church. He purchased multiple apartment complexes where many of the members lived, isolating them further and further away from outside friends and family. This was slow, and it took years. This was the long con. Now that he had control over a large number of people, he tasted that power, and he couldn't get enough of it. He decided that if anyone fell out of line, they needed to be disciplined. One of the things Jim Jones started doing was organizing these so-called boxing matches. They weren't real fights. They were more like forced beatings. If someone messed up or challenged Jones in any way, he'd make them get in front of the whole congregation and fight someone stronger, often getting them seriously hurt. It was humiliating, and it was designed to scare everyone else into falling in line because he would do it in front of the whole church.
All right, now he's bugging. Fuck him.
Kids weren't safe either. If a child acted out, they might get spanked or beaten in front of everyone.
Nah.
Or tossed into a dark room alone for hours. One kid reportedly got locked in a small box for days as punishment, with barely any food or water.
Personally, I don't think nothing's wrong with spankings if you spank your children. But like a pastor being involved or something.
And doing it in front of the entire church.
That happened at my childhood. I've had... And, but when I got older, things changed.
Yeah.
So I got strong.
And the problem is that they would, not only would they, discipline these kids, they would discipline in front of an entire church full of people. So there's a whole humiliation factor to it too. Adults were also punished with sleep deprivation or forced to do hard labor at all hours. Jones controlled every aspect of their lives, where they lived, who they talked to, even who they slept with. People who didn't follow his rules would be publicly shamed during long meetings that went late into the night, with Jones ranting for hours while people just sat there exhausted and afraid. Now, one person that they decided to discipline, this is the only time that I thought it was fine, but what they did to this man was pretty horrendous. So one of the church members, it came out that he was a child molester.
Oh.
And Jim Jones...
String him up by his toes.
So Jim Jones...
Slice his penis like boar's head cheese.
So Jim Jones and his inner circle decided to discipline him. And he was a guy who was a pretty devout member. They took him into a room and they forced him to put his penis and balls on a table, and they proceeded to beat it like for a long time with a rubber hose nonstop until it was so swollen and mangled. He ended up having to go to the hospital.
Good. And
he needed a catheter to pee for like the next few months.
I personally don't think that's enough for a child molester. I don't know why, if someone is definitely molesting a child, there's consequences for physically hurting them. It just doesn't make sense. Hashtag free Cain Velasquez.
Yeah. So that's the only person that Jim Jones disciplined that I agreed with. And it wasn't enough. And the guy ended up getting excommunicated from the community.
Not enough.
Jim Jones, you'll find out, loved sex, but he was not a sexual predator in a sense of he wanted it to be consensual. And he would never... There was no like child molestation allowed or anything like that. Whereas other cults, they have some of that stuff in there. This one did not. The temple was becoming less about community and a movement for socialism and racial inequality and more about control. People were cut off from their families, constantly monitored, and made to feel like they owed their lives and happiness to Jones. Members were coerced into saying they would be willing to kill government officials. After the members put these promises in writing, the documents were collected at temple meetings and delivered to Jones, where he would hold them as collateral and force compliance on the members. There were reports of massive collections of weapons and caches of them at the temples. The members were trained on firearms handlings and threatened with acts of violence against them if they stepped out of line of Jones's teachings. If a member tried to leave, to defect, their lives would actually be in danger because he now has a bunch of members trained with firearms to go after people.
It's almost like a gang where you get jumped in and you got to get jumped out.
Yeah, but
you might not make it on the jump out.
Exactly. Jones established some kind of crazy contingency plans if he were ever captured or killed. First, the members of the People's Temple in San Francisco were supposed to act all stunned and upset, and then they were to start on some diabolical plan that he constructed. These plans included kidnapping public officials, holding them hostage to use as leverage to gain Jones' release if captured. If things went south, then the public officials' children were to be kidnapped, murdered. Then the temple members were told to kill their own children and then themselves. And this is all his plan for if he were to get captured or killed. If the People's Temple ever fell, Jones had created plans to assassinate high-level public officials, including California's governor, the mayor of San Francisco, and the highest-level officials in the country, the president and vice president. Along with the assassination plans, he had plans to bomb a nuclear power plant near San Francisco.
See, but now that'll crush the world.
Yeah, listen.
He's
all in at this point.
So he's basically trying to be like a Hitler and take over the world, and this is the start of it.
Well, he idolized Hitler. He's trying to create a new socialist society. And so these are his plans for if he were to get captured or killed, right? Or if the People's Temple were getting taken down, then this was his plan. Jones' most inner circle were called the Planning Commission. They were mostly made up of his original followers, plus a few newbies who really dove into the lifestyle. They called themselves the PC, and they were all in on Jones. They were his enforcers, his bodyguards, his planners, and a lot of them were his sexual conquests.
Wow.
Now, at this point, Jones has been called a prophet, but he is now taking it a step further and calling himself God. To these people,
here we go.
He was truly a piece of God on earth. And to have sex with him meant you were having sex with God in human form. He didn't just have sex with women either. He had sex with the men too.
Wow.
It was consensual, and these people felt privileged. A lot of it wasn't homosexuality.
Yes, it is.
Motivated. It was power motivated and dominance motivated.
Nah, that's gay. Gay is gay.
Okay. He wanted to show power over these people.
I get it, but it's still gay.
But what I'm saying is his motivator...
Shout out to all the gay dudes. Do your thing. I don't care, but he's gay.
I'm not saying it wasn't gay. What I'm saying was his motivation wasn't that his whole life he was living on the DL and attracted to men. He might have been bisexual. Yeah. I'm just saying he used it as a power move on men and women. His wife, Marceline, had a spinal injury. She was not in a wheelchair, but it caused her severe and chronic pain. She was unable to have sex very often, And at first, she was so angry when Jones started shagging some of the members of the PC, right? She almost divorced him, but he told her he would kill her if she left him. So she stayed and accepted her fate as the wife of a radical, meth-addicted cult leader. And she continued to play her role. She knew if she left, he would surely convince one of his members to kill her. And she didn't want to leave her children behind. Reverend Jim Jones told his followers he needed to have sex because there's so much godly divinity inside of him that he has to release it. And this is the only way. He also refused to wear condoms. So many members in the PC
got AIDS.
No, they got pregnant, and then they were forced to have abortions. He didn't want to father a bunch of kids. He just wanted to have sex with no condom. He didn't want to pull out, and then he forced women to have abortions even if they didn't want to. At this point, on our road to Jonestown, we are seeing the scope of Reverend Jim Jones' evil. We are watching the duality of a man unfold before us. As I said in the beginning, Jim Jones makes you take a hard look at humanity and wonder, can someone be all good or all bad? Before they ever set foot in the jungle, the People's Temple was already unraveling. What began as a hopeful movement, a place where the poor, the outcasts, and the overlooked could finally belong, slowly twisted into something darker. Jim Jones preached about equality and justice, healing the sick, feeding the hungry, bringing people of all races together in a time when that was rare. But behind sermons and smiles was a man obsessed with control. Members gave up everything, money, families, even their own thoughts, to follow him. Love turned into fear, and devotion turned into blind obedience. In California, whispers of abuse, manipulation, and mind games started to surface about the group. Jones himself was unraveling, paranoid and power-hungry, convinced the world was out to destroy him. So when he spoke of a new beginning in a faraway land, a promised paradise free from oppression, his followers followed. But what they found in the jungle wasn't salvation. It was the beginning of the end. And that, my friend, is the end of part 1 of Jonestown. And we will be back for part 2.
I need some more. I could see from watching the documentary on Netflix, How to Start a Cult. I don't know if that's the name of it, but I could see where this is going.
Well, yeah. You can see where it's going because you've seen him slowly spiral.
So what do they say? What is that? Absolute power corrupts?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So he's getting too much power. And I mean, this happens in governments all the time.
It does. And he has power over these individuals. And it's becoming sinister. He's punishing them with public humiliation, with forced beatings.
But they also seem...
There are also a ton of children that are stuck in this situation. There's a whole ton of kids that are stuck here because their parents have chosen to follow this dude. Maybe it's not evil, like evil as far as... Yet, as far as Adolf Hitler became that evil.
Well,
there is a spectrum of evil.
He might be Hitler. It might be one of the evilest people that have ever lived on Earth.
Yeah, I mean, there's
I don't know all the other past history. There's
there's a lot of evil ones, but
there's a ton. I don't have a measuring.
I mean, Hitler's in the top.
He's as evil as anyone that's ever lived. Like as of right now, he just seems to enjoy his power and
he's manipulating,
being able to sleep with anyone.
He's lying. He's manipulating. He's doing bad things.
Yeah.
And the things he's doing to these people is disturbing in a lot of ways.
I don't feel bad for them.
You don't feel bad at all?
No, because they chose to be there. Because if you would have listened to 1 or 2 sermons, you're like, oh, this fucking dude's weird. He got sunglasses on and he's at the
You're not able to, just for a second, put yourself in the shoes of some of these people who were disenfranchised and see him in the beginning, especially as somebody that fought for them?
Absolutely. I put myself in their shoes as growing up as super poor as a kid and being in a church, and I wouldn't blindly follow anyone.
You wouldn't.
So,
but you
once you're there on your own free will, you say, hey, I want to be able to do all this. Well, tell me that. I'm like, well, that's on you, bruh. You can't do, it doesn't matter.
I understand that you personally would never.
But is it my job to protect, or anyone's job to just protect idiots?
But I understand that you personally would never have blind obedience to anybody, right? You barely have unblind obedience to anybody. I understand that you would never do it, but you can't for a second just see and understand why these people did.
It's natural selection at that point.
All right, Russ. Well, I can see.
And I know this is insensitive.
It is. It's really insensitive, and you have
you're here.
You have no empathy whatsoever.
But you're here because your ancestors went through hard times and made it.
Okay.
So it's natural selection to me.
Okay. Well, I still think there is I think that two truths.
And people don't want to hear that. I know there's going to be a lot of people pissed off at me. But that's how every single one of you is still here, because your ancestors made it through natural selection and didn't die off because they weren't weak.
It doesn't have to always be one or the other, Russ. Two truths can exist at once. Someone can feel seen and be a disenfranchised person and see this person do good and follow them. And then also they can fall down this unfortunate path of blind obedience, but it doesn't mean that they're complete idiots. It doesn't have to be one or the other. Either you're smart or dumb. Either, it doesn't have to be that way. Sometimes things can be circumstantial.
Well, we could agree to disagree.
All right. That's fine. Well, that's where we'll leave it. And we will come back on our next episode for Jonestown Part 2, where they go and build Jonestown.
All right, folks. I'll catch you next episode, and good thing we're all smart enough to not follow an idiot.
All right, everybody, check us out on Instagram at Wife of Crime Pod and Facebook at Wife of Crime the Crime Family, and we will talk to you later.
Peace.
All right, bye.